How hard is it for you as a just such an iconic part of this franchise to watch the struggles of who they are now?
Yeah, it's really tough, really tough. I was with Mark Davis at the NBA Cup a couple, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I just told him, man, look, I'm not coming back, not because I'm embarrassed or whatever, but it's very difficult for me because I went through some tough times with the Raiders, and this is worse than what we went through. So it's hard to sit there and watch what's going on the field when they really don't have a chance to win football games at this particular point. So, yeah, it's very tough, man. It really is, and you feel bad for the guys, but at the same time, somebody has to be part of the group that turns this thing around.
I read Amy Trask's book, of course, former CEO of the Raiders, and one of the chapters just highlights the badge of honor that it is for so many Raiders fans to be a Raiders fan. That there is just
Mhm.
this group, this fraternity, just this badge of honor that it is to represent and to love that team from somebody that played for this organization. What was it like for you to be in such a special fraternity?
Yeah, look, Raider Nation is the reason why I stayed with the Raiders. I mean, I had a couple opportunities to leave, but I realized after the '96 football season that these guys looked at me as something more than a football player. I mean, they relied on me, for their happiness. I felt like on the weekends, and I never forget that '96 we were a horrible football team. We were losing every game at home, and there was one game where the fans started to boo us. Right, so I had this radio show that was pretty popular up there in Oakland, and I just went off on the fan base, and I was scared because we're talking about Raider Nation here. You just never know what could happen. But the next game, we were just as horrible in that game, and people started to boo. And you actually saw people going, "No, don't do that. Don't do that." And I was like, man, these guys are really listening to me. They're really, tuned in to what I'm saying. So I still do tours for tots and things like that with Raider Nation after all these years. I mean, they are a special group. And, when you're following a football team that's up and down with all the turnarounds that the Raiders have, it is pretty remarkable that the fan base is still so strong.
That is in large part, as someone that was part of that fan base at that time, even watching you play, you represented stability to all of us. I think that's the thing that maybe players don't always understand. Like the team sucked so much then, couldn't get a quarterback, nothing was working right. But you were the one constant on Sunday that you knew Tim Brown was going to show up, and you knew Tim Brown was going to be absolutely incredible. I say that because I would say that Maxx Crosby is in many ways the current version of that. He is stability for the franchise. Now we're trying to figure out if Max is going to stay there. He's not going to stay there. You faced those same questions in your career. What advice would you give Max on when it's the right time to just turn around and say, I need to find something else?
I think the one thing I do realize now, being on this side of the game, is winning championships is what this thing is all about. You don't play a team sport to get individual awards, right? And I have a lot of individual awards, and I'm very thankful for those individual awards. But I tell you what, every year around Super Bowl time, man, it is the worst time of the year for me. Because I am constantly reminded that I never got that accomplished. And I think Max has to be, within himself, he had to be able to say, I can win a championship here. And if he feels like that, I think you should go for it. Now, fortunately for me, I had a real run. We had the AFC Championship, the Tuck Rule game, and then we went to the Super Bowl. So we had a real run at it. So I feel good about that. But man, the ultimate thing here is to try and win a championship. And, if Max feels as if he can get it done, of course, I want him to be with the Raiders forever. But at the same time, you got a lot of life to live after football, and you got to be able to live with your decisions right now.
I can't help but look over both of your shoulders as you're talking. I see your Canton bust and your Heisman Trophy, pretty star-studded backdrop there. What are you most proud of in your football accomplishments?
Well, the Heisman Trophy is super special because you are the only one that particular year to receive the award. And it certainly puts you on a map, right? Whether that's good or bad, you're going to be on the map. And I think for me, it was a great thing because it gave me more confidence in myself than maybe I even had going into that season. And to end up with the in the Hall of Fame, it's not a 1 year, it's not a 2 year, it's not a 5 year deal. It's 8, 9, 10 years. Especially at the receiver position that you have to put in to get that honor. So I love them both, and I will never choose between the two. But certainly, the Hall of Fame is it's a very special honor.
You mentioned some of the heartbreaking losses you were part of when the Raiders had a run, and I remember this so just clearly as a fan. The Siragusa late hit on Gannon knocks him out, playoffs end. Then you have the Tuck rule, playoffs end. Then you have the Super Bowl, and obviously that didn't go the way anybody expected. But now I feel like when we look at certain organizations, like look at Buffalo and the way that Buffalo just hasn't been able to get over the hump. You got over the hump to get to the Super Bowl. What sort of would you tell fan bases and organizations when they're just stuck right at that level and can't quite get there? What is the key to getting over the hump?
Well, for us, it really started the last game of the '99 season. It was 2000, January 2nd or something in 2000. We were in Kansas City, playing Kansas City in a game that we had, our season was over with. And during that game, we got down early in the game by 15, 17 points or something like that. And Tyrone Wheatley on the sideline just had a conniption, just had a fit. And, he was yelling and screaming, I'm tired of losing to these guys. I'm tired of this. I'm sick of this. We got to do something. And, man, everybody just caught that energy. And we came back and won a game that we had no reason to win, other than that, we had a brother on the sideline going off. And they were playing for the AFC West championship, AFC West division title at that time, I believe. So, but it was that energy that we talked about all offseason that we brought into the 2000 season, and that we ended up in the AFC Championship game that year. So, it really takes a bunch of guys getting together and getting on the same page and really believing that you can get something done, man. And the Raiders need a couple more players. They need some more help for sure. But I think if they can get the help, now we gotta get a new coach and all that kind of stuff. I get all that, but certainly this thing can be done very quickly at this particular point.
Yeah, you mentioned the Raiders need some players. Raiders are also in a head coaching search right now. Looking around at the NFL, who would you want to coach the Raiders?
I think when Harbaugh was let go, I think he became number one on everybody's list. No doubt about that. So a guy like that who's had so much success, I mean, if he would entertain, coaching your team, I think you should definitely take a look at that. But if not him, I think it's going to be one of these hot offensive coordinators, Kubiak, or someone of that nature. I heard Flores, in Minnesota. It'll be somebody like that for sure. Clint from the Commanders, he left his job to pursue head coaching job. So, it's going to be somebody like that, I'm sure. But if Harbaugh wants a gig, I'm more than certain that they're not going to be any teams that are going to turn him down.
I know Al Davis famously leaned on so many people when he's making decisions. Mark Davis obviously does the same, right? And so that's become Brady in a lot of this conversation. How involved have you just been in talking to the Raiders organizationally about how to fix the culture?
Unfortunately, not much at all, man. I don't get any phone calls before asking, and that bothers me a little bit. It does, because I know the fan base, listens to me still. If I say something, they're going to react to it. And but it is what it is. Mark Davis and I, unfortunately, we didn't really, we weren't there. Mark was there early in my career. Then he was away, and I really never ever saw Mark again until his dad passed away. So all those years, we really didn't have a connection. So he has a better connection with other guys, Charles Woodson and guys like that, which is great. But every time I'm around him, I try to let him know, man, look, I love the Raiders, always will love the Raiders. If I can do something, I'm here. But I don't want a job though, brother. I'm not trying to be. And so I think from that standpoint, he knows I'll do whatever he needs me to do to help the team.
You played in the NFL in a time where there were so many great receivers in the game. And the position has changed so much. What has been the biggest change or difference that you've seen from your time playing a receiver in the league to now?
Well, there's no hard bump and run anymore. Our big deal back in the day was, the fight was the first 5 yards. Once you got past 5 yards, it was okay. Well, now we can play football, right? But it was a battle to get off the field, because we had cornerbacks who were trained to, try and stop you at the line of scrimmage, So, and I wasn't a big physical guy, so that was. Gruden got there. We invented anytime you want to go in motion, Tim Brown, go in motion. So anytime I want to get a guy to back off a little bit, if I just went 2 steps in motion, that guy would automatically back up. So I think that's one of the big things that has happened. Certainly, you have the rules where you don't have to worry about getting your head taken off going across the middle anymore, like we had to worry about back in the day. I think those two things sort of relaxes the receiver position and let these guys know they can basically do whatever they want to do. If they got a quarterback who can get them the ball, it's very difficult for a guy to mimic a receiver. It's a DB to mimic a receiver's route running, right? So it's going to be very tough for a guy to knock a ball down for a really good route runner, like a Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase. It's almost impossible if you're not putting your hands on this guy, at the line of scrimmage. So I think from that standpoint, just the freedom that the receivers have these days is just a lot different than what we had back in the day.
Who do you love watching play right now? Who's your favorite?
I think those two guys I just mentioned are certainly top of the list for sure. Of course, Devontae. I liked him better when Devontae was at the Raiders, but certainly, the way he goes about doing what he does. He's not a physical guy. He's not a fast guy, but man, he has the ability to run routes, and it's a beautiful thing to watch.
Look, on behalf of Raiders fans everywhere, there haven't been a lot of bright spots. I mean, I'm almost 50, and I've been watching Raiders football since I was 8 years old. So there haven't been a lot of bright spots. You, my friend, have always been one of those bright spots. It's been a joy to get to watch you in your career, and you've impacted lives beyond what you could ever imagine. So thank you for sharing our 100th show with us, and thanks selfishly for just coming on and talking Raiders football with me. I could do it all day with you, brother. We really appreciate your time.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks again. I appreciate you guys inviting me to be here.